he and O.J. Simpson were talking. Well, this was before the glove. And they were talking, and it was my first date with my husband. He was taking me to one of his friends' art galleries. And we walked in, and I saw Andy Warhol across the room, and all of a sudden he went running over to me and said, Kate, oh, I love you. And there's OJ. I mean, there was no way my husband wasn't going to marry me after that introduction.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Finding Your Bliss, the show that helps you find and follow your bliss. I'm Judy Librach, and today I'm joined by the beautiful, brilliant, and talented film, television, and soap opera actress extraordinaire, two-time novelist, and author of the absolutely delightful Changing Shoes, Staying in the Game with Style, Humor, and Grace. And it's all of those things. I love this book. I first discovered Tina not in the obvious place on Guiding Light, where she spent 26 years playing the nurse Lilian Raines, but on her wonderful Instagram page, where she posts videos every day called Aging Tips. There was something so compelling about her beauty, authenticity, humor, and earrings. But we'll get to those in a moment. But first, let me tell you a little bit more about Tina Sloan. Tina has appeared in many films with some huge famous stars: Woody Allen's Celebrity and the Curse of the Jade Scorpion, The Brave One with Jodie Foster, Changing Lanes with Ben Affleck, The Guru with Marissa Tomei, People I Know with Al Pacino, Black Swan with Natalie Portman, and The Post with Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep. On television, Tina played Lilian Raines on Guiding Light for 26 years, and for 10 years before that, she was on all these soaps: Somerset, Search for Tomorrow, which I remember it was on Channel 3 in Montreal, where I grew up, and Another World. She's also been on Law and Order, SVU, and Third Watch. The release of her first book, Changing Shoes, coincided with the one-woman show she wrote, also called Changing Shoes. It opened in New York, and she performed it all across the country and in London too. Tina has done several web series as well: Venice the series and Beacon Hill the series, as well as numerous speaking engagements. Her books, and I've got them right here: Chasing Cleopatra. And by the way, thank you for sending these beautiful books. And Chasing Othello are packed with romance, adventure, fun, and life. And that's one of the secrets to Tina Sloan's success. She knows how to live life to the full. Tina lives in Florida with her husband of 48 years. They love to travel the world, and they especially love to visit their son, Rennie, who lives in Nashville with his wife and 3 children. Tina has run, now get this, guys, 8 marathons. Oh my gosh. And climbed 2 20,000-foot peaks in Africa and Nepal, and she's just getting started. Tina Sloan, what a delight to have you here. Welcome to Finding Your Bliss.
Thank you. Thank you. I think about what you just said, and I thought, was that me that did all those things?
Definitely was. And Tina, as I mentioned, in addition to your illustrious career in one of the longest running soaps ever, Guiding Light, which I believe played for 72 years, if you include radio, you played the leading lady, Lilian Raines, for 26 years, and your numerous appearances in film and TV. And I really became aware of you for the first time, as mentioned, when I was scrolling Instagram. And I discovered your page where you post these wonderful videos, which really are, and I want to tell the audience about this, musings, thoughts, anecdotes, secrets, noticings, entertainment, advice, and fun. And I was just blown away and really became addicted to your page. And that's how I found you. Can you tell us more about your incredible following on Instagram? And I want to tell you all, you can find Tina Sloan at Tina, Tina, Sloan, Sloan, on Instagram. What do you attribute to this page's phenomenal success?
You know, I remember thinking, people would ask me questions because I'm 80, and they'd say, how are you so young at 80? And I'd think, oh, there's some tricks I got from Guiding Light and good things I got living. And I put them on as aging tips. I went #aging tips. And I think I had a normal amount of followers. Within 6 months, I had 25,000 followers. I mean, it was fascinating because I think I'm very honest and I say things that are ridiculous sometimes and I laugh at myself, but I seem to help people. Yesterday, I mean, I did a really good one the other day on Memorial Day about the coins people put on soldiers' tombs, and I'd gone to visit a friend of ours who had died in Arlington, and I saw pennies, nickels, and quarters on his tomb. And then I looked around and didn't see any. And then when we were walking out, I saw someone else with change on it. So I decided to tell people what that meant because I asked a woman what it meant, and she said, if people put a penny on, it means they visited the grave. If they put a nickel on, it means they've gone to boot camp with this soldier. If they put a dime on, it means they've fought in the same battalion. And if they put a quarter on, it means they were with him when he died. Well, I thought this was just a wonderful Memorial Day thing. And those are things that I like to put on, aging tips. And people seem to really like them. And it makes me feel I'm giving back. When I did Changing Shoes, the play, I used to stand backstage and say, why am I doing this? Why am I going all over the country? And I say to myself, if I can change just one person tonight, one woman's life primarily, it's worth it. And I think that's what I'm doing with my aging tips too. I'm trying to help people in some funny way and laughable way and sad way to see another side, to make life more palatable and more fun and more wonderful.
It's
Now
so
you know.
fantastic. I got to ask you about the earrings because you always are dressed. You always have makeup on. And I
Oh,
thought, good
always.
for you. And it's so important. And I'm a big believer in that as well. Even if you're staying home and you're not seeing anyone, even if you're not on camera, for yourself.
Right.
But
I do it
explain
every
the
day.
earrings. Where do they all come from? Why earrings?
These my friend Susie gave me. I love these. But usually I wear long dangly ones that a friend of mine, I was shopping in Palm Beach. I wasn't shopping. We were going to a lecture and she said, let's stop at this store. And I went, oh, okay. And we went in and I saw these really lovely dangly earrings, but I thought, oh, I'll never wear them. So I went out to the car. We were on our way over to the lecture and she gave me a package and in it were these long dangly earrings and I put them on
Aw.
and everybody said I love them, and then I went back to the store and got every color. They're blueberries, they're lemons, they're avocados and oranges,
Wow.
and I they make me happy when I look in the mirror, and when I put makeup on it really makes me a lot happier than the days. I usually spend one day maybe when I don't wear too much makeup. I think it's probably good for our skin. But if I wear makeup and I wear long earrings or any earrings, I like myself more and I feel better when I pass a mirror or I see the pool man coming and he's chatting with me and he'll say, oh, I like your earrings. And I say, well, thank you.
You spent a lot of years, 26 to be precise, in the makeup chair at Guiding Light. And I'm sure you learned a lot of tips and had a lot of fun sitting in that makeup chair. What was that like?
Well, I think the makeup chair is where everybody sort of gossiped. I mean, it was the place to find out what was going on, who was doing what, and where they were doing it. And I guess I learned, I mean, I certainly learned to put a line up because I have cat eyes, they told me. That's something I remember. And I use a base now, and I honestly should have stock in this company because I've mentioned it so often on aging tips, but it's called Perbelle, Perbelle, and it makes you look young. I mean, it's really wonderful. I'm not making a thing for it. You know, some companies have called me after they've heard where I've mentioned the shoes I wear that are comfortable for older people that are still pretty, like Sarah Flint, or and they said, "Do you want to help us, or do you want to?" And I said, "No, no, no. I'm doing this. This is my mission: is to help people, not to make money. Though I'd love to make money, but I'm not going to do that because it would change what I was doing."
I think we should make a deal with Chanel, though, because I have a lot to say about Chanel later on, but that could be very profitable. In doing research for this interview, I watched you on a show that was hosted by two guys. This was about 8 years ago that you did this. It's online if anyone wants to see it. And you looked gorgeous on that program, as always. And one of the hosts, who was gay, said he would change just for you, that you would actually make him straight. That's how beautiful he thought you were. And I also love the story in your book, Changing Shoes, about how whenever the phone would ring, even on set, it would always be another guy for you. You just had the it factor. Can you tell us how you got into this acting profession? I know it wasn't your mother's first choice for you. at all,
No, no,
but you did it anyway.
sure.
Can you tell
I
us?
mean, I think we all know inside of ourselves what we should do with our lives. And when I told my parents I wanted to act, they just laughed. My mother especially. She told me it was déclassé. I went, okay, I don't even know what that means, but all right. And I just pursued it because it's what I wanted to do. And I mean, there were times when I thought I was never going to make it. Obviously, I was pounding the pavements, trying to get an agent, trying to get an audition. And finally, I got an audition. Oh, Fort. I had a tiny little off Broadway play I was in. I think I had 12 lines. But someone from Ford
Yes.
Model Agency saw me and they said, come on in. So they sent me out on a commercial and I got it. So, I mean, I was golden. In those days, being blonde, blue eyed, you had it made. I mean, you just did everything. And I could look
Yes.
glamorous and do Clairol, and I could look like a mommy and do Pampers. I had the ability to sort of be a chameleon, and that paid off
Wow.
in the commercials. And then,
Yes.
then I decided I was tired of running around all day, every day, going from one audition to another, and I wanted to do a soap opera. So I said to my agent, if you don't do it, I'll go to another agent. So he sent me on an audition, and I got it. And I just love doing soap operas. You know, Judy, I walked onto the set the first time and I thought, this is where I belong. And I've heard people say this, they get cards at a bridge table and they say, this is what I want to do. Or they walk onto a golf course and they think, oh, this is who I am. Or you write a book and you're feeling, "Hey, this, I'm finding who I am." And I'm sure
Yes.
you feel this way, right? I mean, what you're
Of
doing
course.
is probably what you want to do. You want to be who you
Absolutely.
are right now, interviewing people, finding their
Yes.
bliss for them. You said you teach, you were just making us breathe and meditate. And I think that, that's probably who you are, and you find that out. And you say, this is what I want
Yes.
to do. And you follow it. If you find your bliss, then you follow it.
Yes, absolutely. You have to be brave to do that. And I want to go back a little more into your childhood because your mother actually convinced you to go to Paris to meet with a Parisian friend of your parents. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Aja Church, who you had spent a summer with in your 20s. And she was this very classy, well-bred woman, much like you. And your parents thought she would talk some sense into you about not choosing the acting profession, but that's not exactly what happened. What impact did I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Church
Aga,
have on your
Aga.
life and career?
Oh, such an impact on my life. I mean, I think of her all the time. Everything she did was wonderful. Men were insane about her. She was married, but I'd watch her. She owned something called, oh, I'm not forgetting the name of it, but it was a nightclub, a Parisian nightclub. It was just something she sort of did, offhandedly. She invested in it, and it became a very famous nightclub. And she'd take me there. She'd take me to Maxime's. She'd take me to Chanel to buy shoes because I was wearing little Papagallos, I think, at the time, or Capizios, and she wanted me to be a little more elegant. So she took me and she bought me a beautiful dress too. She just had such
Wow.
style and such joie de vivre. And I remember her going to a man. I'll never forget this. Just watching her with people, and she said, "Oh, Walty," what did she say? "Oh, Walty, I just love your green eyes. They're so. I just love seeing those." The next day, a green emerald came to her. I'm not kidding you.
Oh
And
my,
when she died, she left me that emerald.
you're kidding me.
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
Oh my God.
It came. I almost cry when I think of it. I'd gone back to see her when she was older, when she was probably 80, like I was. I think she was a little older than that, and she had diminished quite a bit. I mean, she
Yes.
wasn't that woman that I'd met that was changed my life, that made me excited to see her. And she
Yes.
was quite diminished. Her husband had died, and because he was English, he had not been able to leave her money because they lived in Paris. There was some
Oh,
English law, so she was without resources to keep herself, where she'd walk into a hotel or the bar in a hotel and they'd all fall all over because she was tipping them probably
yes.
$100 or whatever it was. She was just a small sort of woman. And anyway, I visited her. I brought my husband. I brought my son to see her. And when
Wow.
she died, I got a letter from her saying, Tina, I could hear her voice, Tina, you must always follow your heart. You must always do what you want to do. And I hope these are for your son. He has green eyes too. and I took open the box, and there was that ring. And what I did, I gave it to my son as, I guess, as an engagement ring for his wife, but I think I had something else in
Wow.
mind for it. And I mean, she was perfect. She really was. She was a great skier. She was a dynamo. Nothing phased her until life took a bad turn for her. And I remember I was making money myself then. So needless to say, I sent her money. Um, and then she died pretty soon after that. But when I got that ring, and it just brought back the memories. Walty, oh, you are so, oh, those eyes of yours, Oh, we
Oh
all
my
could,
God.
we all could learn from French women like that, couldn't we?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And you talk about that in the book about flirtation, which I'm going to get to because it's fascinating. So let's go now. Let's fast forward to what it was like when you were told they wanted you to play the role for Lilian Raines, which originally that they thought was going to be for 6 months. You had that you played that role for 26 years. That's a very long time on Guiding Light. The character had an abusive husband, was the mother of a 20-year-old. I know you left at the chance. Do you remember that audition? And did you know at the time that it was going to change your life?
I didn't have to audition. Gail, the producer, called me in. She'd seen me on on Somerset, where I was a really strong woman. I was a publisher of a newspaper, and I fired a man who was the editor who I married on the show. I was just very strong, but they wanted a strong woman to play a weak woman. This woman, Lilian, was going to be very weak, but
Yes.
they needed someone who wasn't weak inside to play a weak woman. They wanted a strong woman. So I walked in, and she said, this is just going to be a short part. Do you mind having a 20-year-old daughter? I said, oh, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to be on this show. So I did it, and I stayed there for 26 years. I was there till the day the show went off the air. I had the last line of shooting of that show. I mean, they showed other things at the end of the scene, but I had the last line, and it was, "Weren't we lucky to have each other?" And I couldn't get it out. I kept crying. I was very good about not holding people up, but I couldn't say that line to all these people that had all been together. And it was not supposed to be about the end of the show. It was supposed to be about something else. And I said, weren't we lucky to have each other? And finally I got it out the right way.
Oh,
We're lucky to have each other.
what a great story. You mentioned Somerset and you did many other soaps. We talked about them, Another World, Somerset, and others. And Andy Warhol once stopped you. You write about this in the book at an art gallery, recognized you, and actually called out to you because he was addicted to watching you on that soap. Like, that's pretty cool stuff.
He was with O.J. Simpson. He and O.J. Simpson were talking. Well, this was before the glove. And they were talking, and I was my first date with my husband. He was taking me to one of his friends' art galleries. And we walked in, and I saw Andy Warhol across the room, and all of a sudden he went running over to me and said, Kate, oh, I love you, I love you. And there's OJ. I mean, there was no way my husband wasn't going to marry me after that introduction. It was perfect.
That is fabulous. That is fabulous. So I just want the audience to understand that you actually spent 26 years. So you went from being the star actress, the star of the show on Guiding Light, to becoming the mother of the star and then the grandmother of the star. And it really feels, and I see this even watching you today, that you were able to achieve all of this with effortless grace. How were you able to do that?
Well, the day the show was over, I was about to become a great grandmother. My granddaughter was about to have a baby when the show was ending. I don't know. I just
That's
was so
incredible.
happy to be working. As I said, when I walked into that room, into a TV studio, I thought, this is where I belong. I'm home here. So I wasn't going to give it up. I mean, there were times when it was not good and I was not used at all and I was depressed and I'd cry and I'd eat M&Ms. I remember in my dressing room, was M&Ms to make me feel better. And it didn't always make me feel better. But I
Yes.
loved all the people I was working with, so I was going to just stay there if I could, and I did.
You had to learn lines on a daily basis and keep up with such a rigor. And I even find like doing this show, which I've been doing for 4 years, I do it like 51 weeks of the year practically. And I'm wondering how you were able to do this every day with television scripts changing at the last minute, sometimes 10 minutes before you go to air. Were you just a great memorizer? Did you find it hard to learn your lines, or was it just something you developed that muscle and were able to do it?
I think I was probably always good at it. I mean, but I was young too when I started. I mean, that was easy. Now, if they gave me a script, I'm not sure if I could learn it. But then in those days, I just read it and studied it and did it. I mean, it wasn't hard at all for me. There were people it was hard for who couldn't read it and learn it. And I remember they'd get tape recorders and listen to it so they could learn it that way. But to be on a show 5 days a week, not that you are usually, but and the scripts were 72 pages a day. If you had a big part, I mean, if you were really having a storyline that was important, you had to work very hard. And people were really good at this. I mean, everyone was good natured. This show, Guiding Light, and it was known for it. It was just, everyone on it was lovely, almost.
So fun.
Really, they were just wonderful people. And the crew were fabulous. Hair and makeup was terrific, wardrobe. You loved everybody, so you wanted to be there. It just wasn't that hard for me. I mean, there are things that are hard. It
was fun, and yet it was.
My husband's a great golfer, and I tried to play golf. That's hard for me. I'm just not very athletic, so there are things I'm not good at. But acting, I'm good at.
So you created this one-woman autobiographical play called Changing Shoes, which I think began in Boca, Florida. You wrote that Changing Shoes is a play about change and about finding the courage to transform yourself. That's what this show's all about. Dreams have no expiry date. And twinkle again after your lights have been dimmed. And I believe that show, that one-woman autobiographical show, became the springboard for your beautiful book, Changing Shoes, which, as I mentioned, I devoured. What was it like when you did that one-woman play of Changing Shoes? That must have been such a trip for you.
It was delightful. I mean, I loved going from. First of all, I had these cute young girls, two of them. They were one I had first, and then she got pregnant. She was married. She got pregnant. Her sister came, and then she was married and got pregnant. I gave everybody pregnancy. I used to say, sitting at this table with me makes you pregnant. So be careful if you don't want a baby. It was fun to go from all over, to go to Pittsburgh, to go to Houston, it opened in New York City. That's where I wrote it, where I lived in New York my whole life until we moved to Florida. Wow. And, I wrote it with a man named Joe Plummer, who directed the play. And he was absolutely wonderful. I mean, he was a Shakespearean person. He had a Shakespearean troupe, and he did that. Now he's doing documentaries. He was really smart. Wow. So I would get up and we'd get a topic and I'd talk about it. And sometimes we'd have huge fights, but I'd talk about it and he would take notes, and then we'd make the play from what, he'd say, how do you feel about love affairs or whatever he decided to pick out? And I would discuss and say, yes, no, whatever. How do you feel about eating chocolate chip cookies? And I'd say, oh, all right, I'll go get you one, Joe. I know what you want. But we were really good. My husband was wonderful. He didn't mind that Joe would come over after or for dinner every night. He was just newly married too. And we'd work on it because he had a job and I had a job. And we'd work on it, and then we'd do it, and then we'd play back all the things we talked about and make it fit together. So the process was wonderful. And Joe became so much part of our family. It was wonderful.
And how long did you do that for, Tina, this show, the one-woman show?
About a year, I think. Might have been longer. And, I know it was longer because I'd be somewhere and they'd say, wouldn't you like to do your play here? And I'd say, sure. And they would say, someone recently said, wouldn't you like to redo it? And I went, no. And then just the other day, Judy, I was going through some old DVDs and I found a DVD of the play. I didn't know it had ever been filmed. And so I'm going to put it on my YouTube channel and I'm going to watch it and see what I did, because it was really, wow. It was really wonderful. And I said earlier that, I wanted to prove something and say something to people about, you have to change your shoes constantly. You can have sexy high heels when you're young and you parade around and you're close to the stars and you're thrilled with yourself. And then, you start getting running shoes when you're going to run marathons. And then you get in I had pink boots when I climbed Kilimanjaro, I remember.
Mount
And you
Kilimanjaro,
change,
yes.
you keep changing what you're doing because
Mhm.
it's what life is about. And if you try to keep wearing that big high heels, you're in big trouble.
Absolutely. Getting back to the book now, which I think came out of this beautiful one woman show. You wrote the book in 2010, but I have to tell you, that was 13 years ago, but it still is fantastic today. It's like it was written yesterday. And I loved what Emmy Award winning star of All My Children, Susan Lucci, wrote about your book, which was in her fabulous and entertaining book, Changing Shoes. Tina portrays that even though our roles as actors, wives, and mothers may change as life goes on, with the right attitude and shoes, we can stay sexy and relevant and take on new challenges. Can you tell us more about your brainchild and what inspired you to write this? Really, I'm going to have to call it delicious book.
It's a wonderful book. I updated that book too. I put things in to update it about 2 years ago, I think, or maybe 3 years ago, because I thought, we have to know where our passwords are. I was talking about in there the things about you have to do as you get older. Mostly it was a fun book, but there are things you have to do, like a living will and a power of attorney and all these
Yes.
things.
Yes.
And so I came and I thought, gee, if someone doesn't know where your passwords are and something happens to you, everything's over. So I put that in the new book, and I updated a lot of thinking in it. So it is sort of a newer version of the 2010. But I wrote it at the same time we were writing the play. I mean, they crossed into each other a lot.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So wonderful for the people who weren't in Florida or on your tour and could have access to the wonderful story and all the wonderful. It's just so full of so many golden nuggets. I couldn't get over it. I really, I
Thank you,
think people
Judy.
really need to read this book. And I love the humorous and poignant anecdotes. And I loved how you talked about, really always being a beauty. You were always, to this day, a movie star, a goddess. But now there's this aging thing. And we all struggle with this, right? Us in the media, you as an actress, and anyone in show business. And I love that you tackle all of that, from love life to career and family and aging parents. And there's some very poignant moments in the book about that. Your advice is evocative and inspirational. And there's just so much that I loved about it. But I want to talk a little bit about shoes again for a moment, because they're almost like another inanimate object, or another character, if you will, in the book, Changing Shoes. And I guess the question is, what is it about shoes that are so evocative to you?
Huh. That's interesting. I remember when I was trying to think of the title of the book and the play, it took me longer than it took to write it, I think. It was really hard to think what I was trying to say and how I was trying to say it. And then when I realized that it could be done through shoes, and probably I saw someone try to do it through clothes after my play, I must say. I thought, you're copying me. And they were using the dresses from high school and college. You can do that, but I think you could use the clothes you wore as a young girl and as a bride. I mean, there are ways you could have done that, obviously. But shoes just seemed a much easier way if I'm going to do a play, because you can put them on and off where you can't put the dresses on and off on stage. It just seemed an easier way. I don't know. The head of Chanel came and they sent me some beautiful Chanel shoes that were this high. I kept them because they're so beautiful. And they had a big, how they have that flower, the whatever that flower that
Yes.
Chanel always has. It
Yes.
looks like that. They had that in silver on these pink high heels. I mean, I'm going to keep them forever, and I'm certainly never going to wear them. But they're bright, bright pink, and they're just wonderful. Steve, you're making lots of noise. He's making himself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. That's what a good wife I am.
I have to interject for a second and say that Oprah does something. She can't wear the shoes into the restaurant, the shoes you're describing, high-heeled, beautiful stiletto shoes, but she brings them in a bag, her favorite shoes, sits down at the restaurant, walks in her regular shoes, and then puts on the stunning stilettos and enjoys them while she's sitting. And then when she's ready to leave, she packs them up and leaves again. It's a true story. So you can still wear those Chanel shoes.
No, I made a bag called Changing Shoes. And on one side is a black flat, and on the other side is a high heel. And I gave them out when the play opened. and they became sort of a cool
Oh,
statusy symbol for people to have this bag. I've got some left, Judy. If you're really good, you might
oh,
get
I want one. I'll talk. I should do it
and
on the air and do
I do
something.
when I go out. I put my sneakers or whatever in that I'm walking, and then when I get there, I put
Wow.
low high heels on. But I love that bag.
I love that. Oh, that's so cool. What a great idea. I loved the way you talk about in the book about the white Chanel, I believe, high heeled shoes that you wore as Nurse Rainer. Those white high heeled shoes. And every time you put them on, you felt alive and you felt like, wow, like it just gave you that buzz and that feeling of I'm ready. And it's almost like putting on your character dance shoes before you dance on stage. What was it
Right.
about those white high heeled shoes that just made you feel alive?
Well, I mean, I remember the nurses' uniforms early on were just fabulous. You know, they were gorgeous little tight skirts, short little white skirts, and these sexy little blouses and sexy high heels. I mean, I understand how people would have visions of men would especially would be turned on by a nurse. Now, of course, they're in scrubs and sneakers. And Lilian,
Right.
in the end, was wearing scrubs and sneakers, and it was really sort of depressing. I mean, there was nothing
Wow.
quite like, sneakers or white high heels, Chanel shoes was, you just felt, I mean, if it's a Chanel shoe, they're thin and they're beautiful. And Aga Church, my friend in Paris, had taken me to Chanel, and that's where my first pair of Chanel shoes were. I still have
Oh,
them.
wow.
It's
Wow.
just wonderful. And friends of mine have given me shoes that meant something to them. And somebody told me they had a book party. And I thought this was wonderful. Everyone was supposed to bring a pair of shoes that meant something to them and then discuss it at the party. Isn't that a great idea?
Oh, I
They
love
had to read the
that.
book first. Everyone, it was a book party. Everyone read the book first and then they brought their shoes. And I thought that was a wonderful idea. That was
That's
down in,
awesome.
where it was? It was in Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh,
That's where they did it.
that's so cool. I have to ask you, I love the story in the book of how you were with your TV daughter. This was when you were in Guiding Light and you were wearing this stunning, glamorous yellow gown. Fabulous story in the book, everyone changing shoes about this. And you would often, it would be your lunch break. And I guess instead of having whatever they were serving on set, you go out for lunch or just go walk out into the streets of New York, which you love to do in costume. And you notice for the first time, and I know this so well because I have a daughter who's an actor and a singer living in New York, actually. And you notice for the first time that those cat calls and whistles are not for you. And that they had eyes for this daughter in her gown. How did you deal with that at the time? How does that happen, first of all? What can we do to feel better about it or change it? Or do we just have to embrace it?
Well, I do remember sort of hating her when we were walking out. I remember I had a beautiful yellow Oscar de la Renta gown. It was beautiful, and we didn't
Yeah.
have time to change our clothes to go outside. And they were used to seeing us come into this coffee shop like that. So we walked in, and everybody was looking at her, and I thought something's wrong. I don't know what it is, but what's wrong is no one's looking at me. They're all looking at Beth. I really, really didn't like her. I remember going. I mean, I loved her, but I all of a sudden hated her. So I went back to my dressing room and I looked at myself and I thought, I've gotten old. I mean, my arms are, how can I possibly not have sleeves on? How can I be showing my arms? And I was sort of stunned at how fast it seemed to overnight take me on.
Mhm.
And, it was depressing. There's no question. It is depressing, but it's going to happen. It's just what happens to us. And so I think we have to just grin. I'm going to say grin and bear it. And I also found getting close to younger people was a good idea for me because I wasn't going to be jealous. I was going to just enjoy them and make my life fun. Her
Yes.
son is my godson, and he's just going to college. And he just called us the other
Oh,
night about a decision he wanted to make, and he wanted to talk to my husband about it. So we've stayed so close, obviously, that
wow.
this boy is my son. I remember when she asked me, which was 20 years ago, and I said, I'll be 80 by the time he's 20. And she said, I don't care. And I was thrilled to find that out. She didn't care.
Wow. I love that. That's so lovely. Let's talk now a little bit about your brainchild aging tips on Instagram, which is really how I found you, Tina. And it's under the Instagram handle, everybody, at Tina Sloan, Sloan. It's fabulous. I'm obsessed with it. And just to share with our listeners, Tina Sloan delights her followers on Instagram by sharing short videos daily, I believe, where she offers inspirational perspectives on aging and she shares captivating stories. Her insights are insightful and enjoyable. And it's worth noting that you always add a touch of fun to your ensemble and to those wonderful earrings that you wear, your ever-changing collection of earrings. But what also attracted me to the page is that you always look beautiful, put together. So this is for all of us to note, it doesn't work when you're in sweatpants. You got to put on the shoes. You got to put on the outfit. I'm actually wearing great high-heeled shoes, even though I'm sitting here for this virtual recording of this interview, because I thought, what if Tina asked to see my shoes? I better have good shoes on.
I have orange shoes, flats.
I'll show you. 1 second. Here they
Okay.
are. They just match they're like a sandal, but they're cute. They're cute.
That's great. That's terrific.
The Aging Tips is wonderful, and I love it, and I just want everybody to read it because it's just it's what has been the reaction to this wonderful Instagram page? Like, people must just be going crazy.
Just huge. I mean, it just amazed me how it went from normal amount of people, friends following me, to 25,000 in maybe 5-6 months. I don't know. But they're only like a minute long, maybe a minute and a half. And I don't think about what I'm going to say. My husband will say, we're going out, and I'll say, do you have time for me to just do an aging tip? I haven't done one. I don't do them every day. I just sort of do them. Maybe I'll do them today because, I've been sitting here. And he'll say, oh, sure. And a minute later, he'll go out and get in the car. And a minute and a half later, I'm in the car. And it just sort of flows from me. And because I've lived 80 years, I have lots of things to draw from, And so I'll look at an ashtray, or I'll look at a picture, and I'll think of, I'm looking at a picture of aspen trees, and I'll think of that. And then I'll do a talk about it, or a little minute thing. And
fabulous.
I'm also enjoying doing advice to young Tina from older Tina, which I think is sort of, I don't do as many of those, but every now and then I think, if I'd only known this when I was young Tina, if I'd only known it when I was 20 or 25 or 30, and it would have been, life would have been a lot easier. So I put those on, and some young girls have come up to me and said things like, and people I know sort of are watching them. And I see them, it's someone you see once a month or something, and they'll look at me and they'll say, like your earrings on the show, on your Aging Tips today, because they're, as I said, they're all long and dangly.
Yes.
Should I go get up the pairs of them and show you? Maybe my husband.
After we'll do it after, and we'll do a pickup with it, just so we don't be. Yeah, for sure. I'd love that. Love that. I want to also say, just in the book, you have some great Tina's tips for looking fabulous at every age, and they're really fantastic. And I love that you say, find a hairdresser who likes you. That's very important. And always wear makeup. Use an eyelash curler. So good. But I also love your suggestion to find a few uniforms that work for you. Can you tell us more about the uniforms? Because I remember before I got married, having that dating uniform. It was like those two outfits that you wear over and over again on a date. What is the uniform, and how, and what does that mean for you?
Well, certainly in Florida, I wear white pants every day and pretty tops, and that's it. That's all I do. And I have a few, I've cut way back in my clothes. I really have, but I have great turtlenecks that I like to wear with blazers. When we're going to go to Paris this summer, and that's what I'll bring. Nice. I'll have my white pants and probably a navy top, and a navy or a white top and a navy. My husband's just got these wonderful earrings. Thank you, honey. That's all I need. Perfect. Thank you. It's wonderful. Okay, I'm just going to change these for you.
Okay, I love this. So Tina's husband, Steve, just brought some of her dangling, gorgeous earrings that she wears. And if you want to really see them all, definitely go onto Instagram, onto her Aging Tips Instagram page, which is under Tina Sloan. And you can hear about that. Wow. Love those. Tell me about this pair. Those are fab.
Well, they're all from the same person. It's a store in Palm Beach called Kemble, Kembla. And a woman named Mercedes makes them. They're round like this one. I could do ads for people, I tell you. And then
I'm telling you.
These are the ones that are the long ones that I wear most times, because I prefer these, to be honest with you, but I wear these. These are little white ones. These are blueberries.
Gorgeous. So
Aren't they
gorgeous.
fun?
And they look great on you. Like you've sort of found your, like, it's just, I don't know, it's like your thing. They look
You're right.
so, so
I
good.
found my answer to life.
It's, it's great. It's so great. You write about this woman in your book, Tina, a 96-year-old who gave you such great advice about how to stay in the game and how to always sort of have your moxie. And you asked her, how do you do it? And she kind of said, you just do it. But you know what
Yeah.
I'm talking about in your book? What was it about
Yes.
her? And what have you gleaned from that you can share with our listeners about? Because by the way, I just want to say there's a lot of people that when they knew I was doing this episode said, you're aging with such beauty and grace. But some
Thank you.
people have difficulty with it. They struggle with it. You don't seem to be struggling. You're sort of doing it. Maybe it's good genes and good cheekbones. I don't know. But how do you help people who have ageism, who are struggling with the whole aging process? And there are many people like that where it's really a thing. So what did you learn from your
Well,
96-year-old friend?
I remember she was putting her suitcase up. She was putting her own suitcase in the airplane up above, in the little cabin. And I said, "Can I help you?" And I knew who she was because she was sort of famous and she was beautifully dressed. I mean, famous for being her age and being still, playing a little golf and things. She did a lot of things still. And she said, "No, I'm going to do it." And I thought, and I watched her and I sort of stood there in case it fell on us. And then she closed it. And so I looked at her and said, "How do you do it?" Meaning, how do you do what you're doing, living at the way you are? And I do remember this was Alastair Cook, who was he wrote Letters from America. He was a very famous man. He was British. And his wife, I adored his wife. And she acted like everything was wonderful, but she could no longer paint because her hands were all arthritic. And I asked her too, and I said, "Okay, how are you doing this?" And she said, "You just do it." And I think that's the answer. It's like Nike. You just do it. I mean, there's no choice, but you have a choice if you're going to be good natured about it, that you have a choice whether she never complained. And I loved her for not complaining. And then one time she said, "This isn't easy." And I remember being devastated. I didn't want her to say that. I didn't want her to tell me it wasn't going to be easy. I was about 40 then or so, or 50. And I didn't want to hear it wasn't going to be easy to be 80. And, I see a lot of my friends who aren't here. I mean, they're gone or their husbands are gone. And I think that's hard too when you become widowed. I watch the widows here and, I took one of them out for dinner. You try to be part of their lives somewhat, but you can't do it all the time.
Sure.
And, because you're with your husband and it's, I don't know. But I think I love to read. I love to read. Right now I'm reading a book about T.S. Eliot called The Hyacinth Girl. It just came out, that one of my closest friends from college told me to read because I did my thesis on T.S. Eliot. So I'm going to get all my T.S. Eliot books and I'll read them and while I'm reading her book, and I have been. So I think it's having projects. I'm writing another book right now called Chasing Czars, which is the third in the Cleopatra series that I sent you the first.
So it's Cleopatra, Othello, and we were going to ask you what the cliffhanger. What's the next book? That's so cool.
Yeah, it's
how do you write? Do you write every day?
I write.
Do you sit at your
a lot.
computer and write every day?
I write a lot. My computer, yeah, I write here. I guess I write every day, but sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just decide I'm not going to write today. But yeah, I do. And I think it's having projects for yourself. If it's your garden, you get out and play in your garden. And I've had friends say how much they get rejuvenated by working in their garden. And I have another friend who walks and walks and walks. I had an aunt who died at 89, and she walked all the time, 7 miles a day until the last few years of her life.
No way.
And I can remember her trying to open, they give you these medicines and you can't open them to get the pill out, or you try to open a soup can, the pull up ones, and you can't do it. And I'd come up to visit her and she'd say, "I have all these things for you to open for me." I go, "Okay."
Oh, no.
I thought, "Really?" And now I understand what she was talking about. So I have a friend that I have open all our bottles for us. I mean, there are things you're not going to do, so you figure out ways to do them. And I think having younger friends helps too, a lot. I have a good friend.
I totally agree.
50, yeah.
I totally agree. We have a team, and everyone on the team is, I would say, 30 or 40 years younger than me,
I saw
and
Olivia's
it's
very young.
fun.
Yeah,
Right? And then you use
right.
all their lingo and you say all these words. I don't know if you ever watch Excuse My Grandma with Grandma Gail, who's in Palm Beach, and her daughter, her granddaughter. They were on the show and they talk about the cultural divide between, being a grandmother and a granddaughter. And the grandmother sort of deciphers everything from the 50s for the granddaughter and vice versa. They've been on this show. Anyway, I thought you might know
That's
them because
cute.
they're important. But anyway, I found it fascinating that not only are you this really long-standing actress who had like the longest gig in acting history? You've done all these movies with huge stars. You've done all of this work, but you're also a writer, which is so incredible. Chasing Cleopatra was just good fun, everyone. So there's some great books you can read if you're looking for some great summer reading. One is called Chasing Cleopatra. The second is Chasing Othello. And I'll tell you what this book is. There's romance, drama, and thrilling action. Readers will fly through it. I imagine you must have done a ton of research to write the book because you write in detail about the threat of Al-Qaeda, detailed knowledge of plant life and flying helicopters and literature and art. Your story is so complex. Where did this fabulous idea come from? What was the research for this book like, the first book?
I love doing the research. Right now, I'm having such fun doing the research for the new one. As I said, it keeps you in the game. It keeps you alive doing research. You're reading things and you're thinking, oh, this is so interesting. Um, I had a dream that was the basis of Chasing Cleopatra, and let me add, she's a 46-year-old woman. I didn't use a young girl to be the heroine of this book. I used a woman who had lived a bit, and she's very, very beautiful, and she's very athletic, and men just flock to her. And of course, it was sort of fun for me to write her because at 80 this doesn't happen anymore. So I loved writing her, and I just adore this woman. I think she's fabulous. I do have a 24-year-old in there, and she steals the 24-year-old's boyfriend away, not knowing that he has not mentioned to her that he's got a girlfriend. She doesn't have any idea about this. And it all takes place in Honolulu, I ran the Honolulu Marathon years ago. So I got to put that in there. And it just sort of unfolds from me. As I said, by the time you're 80, you've had a lot of life. So there are a lot of life experiences you can put into a book. And, I know with Google and also with artificial intelligence, you can get any answer you want in 2 minutes. Well, not 2 minutes, but you can get your
That's so incredible.
answers.
Do you, and I wonder, does your experience as an actor make stepping into these different characters? Like you go from the glamorous Cleopatra to the mother hen Miranda, the slick CIA agent Trip, violent terrorist, the warm and jovial Pudding and Pudge, and the girl next door Julia, and all have their unique and voices and complicated histories. So has being an actor informed you as a writer? Does it help?
Sure. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I just instantly know how they're feeling and what they're feeling and how they're going to manifest it. I also have a young girl that I talk to about the young characters because I don't always know. I don't know the music. I don't know what's going on. Tech wise, I'm pretty good. I like tech. I think it's fun to do it. I do that
Me too.
AI
Me too.
chat GBT. I mean, I think you've got to stay on top of things or else you're giving in. It's staying. I think that's a very important tip I think I'll do that today. Staying on top of things. And as I said, artificial intelligence is coming on in the world. So we better be reading about it and studying it. And so I did chat GBT, you know what I mean? Where you ask it to, I
Yes.
asked it to do my bio. And in 2 seconds it came out. It wasn't quite right at all, but it came out in about maybe 12 seconds. It just
Wow.
and then you have to know what words to say to make it right. It didn't have any humor. It didn't have any of what I think of myself having, but it had everything else. So I didn't have to go up and look it for my bio and put it together. It was there. So, I mean,
So cool.
artificial
That's so cool.
intelligence is what's happening, and we better beware of it, I think. There are a lot of people that say it's going to overtake us, and I certainly think it could if it can answer me in 2 minutes. And I asked it one question about my new book. I said, do this in Le Carre's voice. Do this in Tom Hanks' voice. Do this in my husband's voice. And just to see what it could do. And it could. It didn't do it greatly, but it did get the right voices somewhat. And I thought that was so interesting.
So cool. You've run 8 marathons. First of all, that in itself, like, wow. And I'm wondering how you achieve that. But you also compare running marathons to aging. How so? How is that a metaphor?
Well,
Aging and a
in the
marathon.
beginning, it's so easy when you're running at the start. It's just you're flying. It feels terrific. You're chatting with people. You're having a great time. In the middle, you're getting a little
Yes.
tired, but not badly. That's being 40, 50, 60. And at the end, it's really tough. I mean, you're hitting the famous wall and you're thinking, can I do this? And one time, I think I mentioned this in the book, my husband and I were running the Marine Corps Marathon. He was way ahead of me. And I was just tired. And I sat down on the curb and I thought, why am I doing this? Run 5 marathons. I don't have to prove anything. At which point, a very, very crippled man was in the marathon. He came by and he looked at me and said, can I help you? Are you all right? And I looked at him and I
Oh,
said, you just helped me by showing me what a jerk I am and how silly I am, that I'm complaining because I'm tired. And here you're doing this with 500. It must be so painful. And he said, well, yes, but you have to just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And I said, I'm going to walk with you for a while. So I walked very slowly with him and then I took off and finished the marathon.
aw.
But, the end of a marathon is like aging. It hurts and you don't want to do it and you don't want to keep going and you want to quit, but you keep going because there is an ending to this. There is a finish line and you should cross it. And, we're all going to have to cross that finish line and we're all going to die. And we know this. And when you get to be 80, you see your friends dying and that's the next step probably, and not a good one because you love life so much, but therefore you should be doing things. And running a marathon reminds you of that. And that boy who looked at me and said, can I help you? That was a real life lesson for me.
I have to tell everyone, the book made me laugh a lot and it was fun, but there's also so many poignant moments in the book. And you have to read it because I can't give it all away here, but about your mother and about looking after your parents when they're aging and the role reversal and what that's like and how hard that is. And there were really moments where I actually cried my eyes out in the book, the several parts of it. So it's poignant. It's got pathos and highs and lows and all of it. And the novels are fabulous too. So really, really incredible stuff. I also love in your book where you tell the story about being in the film Black Swan with Natalie Portman and Winona Ryder. And even though you only had one line, it was so fabulous to film that part and have that experience and how important in life it is even to embrace the small roles. This is for any actors listening, but so true. Can you just say more about that? Because I loved your take on that.
Well, I remember when I went to audition for it, they said they wanted a really chic New York woman. I had an Hermes bag and I was dressed perfectly and I had my hair done. And the right earrings, the right jewelry, everything was perfect. And I went in and the director said, have you ever acted? And I said, well, I was on a soap opera for 30 years or whatever, plural soap operas. And he went, oh, my mother liked those. It's like something like that. And I went, and he said, well, you look the part. Oh, no, that's what he said. You look the part, but can you act? And I went, yeah, I think so. I was just so flabbergasted that that's how he treated me. And then when I got the part, I thought, well, I guess I looked it enough that he gave it to me. It was supposed to be head of the ballet, the chairman, the one who gives all the money. So I got there that night, and I sat between Winona Ryder and Natalie Portman. And I said, hi, I'm Tina Sloan. And they said, hi. And then I looked at Natalie. I said, I'm Rennie McPherson's mother. And she jumped out of her chair because she was a good friend of my son's. All of a sudden, I was welcomed and part of the whole group. But I
Yes.
realized that it's your children. It's your children now. It's not you anymore. It's your children that are opening
That's right.
doors for you.
That's true.
It's not. They didn't care who I
You're
was.
right.
Then she cared once she knew I was Rennie's. They'd been at a wedding the week before together, and they'd gone to Harvard together. So she was just delightful.
Oh, I just love that. I love that. That's such a great story for actors, young and old, because I think again, dreams have no expiry date. So for someone who's listening to this, who might be 20 to 100, who wants to be successful as an actor, to make it in this business, or as a writer, a novelist, or what would be your best advice? Because you've sort of been successful in a lot of different areas.
Well, I'm going to say it's like running a marathon to be an actor, or, you have to pound the pavement. You have to persevere. You're going to be told no so many times, and you have to find something different to get you in the door. You can't be like everybody else. You can't, come in with, I used to come in with a plant sometimes to an agent, because then they'd see the plant for the next 20 years, or it wasn't just a box of candy or flowers that are going to wilt, but something like that. And I also, when I met agents, first of all, I made this huge chart of all the agents there were in New York, and I would call them, and they'd say, call back. I said, you get my picture and resume? This was 50 years ago or 40 years ago. And they'd say, oh, I don't know. I said, well, I'll send it to you again. What's your name? And she'd say, Judy. I'd say, okay, Judy, thank you. And I'd send another picture and resume to Dear Judy. And then I'd call back the next week, and I said, Judy, did you get it? Oh, gee, I don't know. I said, Judy, I'll send it to you again. And I'd send it again. And then finally, Judy would say
Wow.
yes. And I'd say, well, can I come and meet the agent? And she'd say, oh, okay. And,
Yes.
she'd let me in, maybe, not always. Maybe sometimes it just didn't work at all. But you kept pounding the pavement. And I really do mean that. And
Pounding.
it's so much perseverance, and it's not taking it personally. One time I was told I didn't get a commercial because I reminded the man of his ex-wife. And I thought, well, that tells you everything about him. But so you're going to lose parts, and you can't take it seriously that you did something wrong. It's probably
Yeah,
his fault. Or they just didn't,
that's right.
you're not right.
What is the main nugget, Tina, you would love people to take away from your beautiful Instagram page on aging tips and from your books and your life on how to age gracefully and still feel beautiful and vibrant and alive at any age?
Well, I guess you got to have a sense of humor. You've got to be able to laugh at yourself. I see we
Yes.
all stand up, and I don't jump up like I used to. I have to, make sure I'm standing up. I get down on the floor with my grandchildren, and to see me get back up from down on the floor, I
Oh,
laugh
I
at myself. I go, look at me. I can't get up like you can. Now, you show me how you
I
get up, and I'll try to do it your way. You can't do the same thing. You gain
oh,
weight, you just gain weight. And it's not going to come off the way it did, or at least it doesn't come off me the way it did.
true.
It's
Oh,
just the way it is. And I think
yeah.
being able to laugh at yourself, when I'm doing my aging tips, more than not, I'll make a mistake and I laugh. And people I've learned like that. They like you're laughing at yourself. That,
Yes.
I can forget a name. And that's another thing. You forget names when you get older, and you have to laugh about it. You have to say,
Yeah.
all right, I forgot your name. You probably forgot mine, but I'm Tina. You're Matilda. You have to make it work. And it all comes from laughing at yourself.
Yeah.
I really think that's probably the key. When I get serious
So
about getting
smart.
older, it's not fun. So I might as well laugh. There's nothing else to do.
So great. What is bliss for Tina Sloan?
I'd say, I mean, bliss comes to me in different forms. It comes in the form of my grandchildren who are little and love me and think I'm just perfect. It comes in the form of my friends who understand me and I understand them, and we're not perfect. It comes in the form of talking to you. This has been so much fun. It's fun to talk to you, Judy. It's all about me.
Thank
How
you.
could that not be fun? um, it comes in the form of I meditate every day. I try to exercise every morning. My acting teacher said, if you say try, you're not going to do it, but I do it. I exercise almost every morning. It comes in terms of
Great.
bliss is putting on makeup and then looking at yourself and thinking, okay, you're old, but you're doing the best you can do. So that's blissful.
I love that. I have to tell you, it's really been an honor and an absolute delight to sit down and talk with you today.
Thank you,
Really
Judy. I really
loved it.
enjoyed it too. As I said, what could be
So
more
great.
blissful than talking about yourself? Thank
What
you.
is the best way for people to connect with you? Thank you. What is the best way for people to connect with you on social media and to watch your wonderful Instagram page and to get all of your books and all the rest?
Well, Amazon has all my books. Tina Sloan at Amazon has all three of my books, and hopefully the fourth soon. Um, and And they're really fun. I mean, I think my novels take you places that you just love to go. But Tina
Yes.
Sloan at Instagram, Sloan. And I answer. People ask me questions on it, and I try to answer them. I pretty much do. I answered you.
Love that. I know. I was so thrilled. I was actually so thrilled when I heard that. Oh, she's a famous soap opera star. Is she ever going to respond to this? Maybe her media representative. And you wrote me, and I said,
Yeah,
sometimes you just have to ask, right?
that's right.
It's
That's
so
right.
important to ask.